This message is intended for the ears of the President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, His Excellency Emerson Mnangagwa, and those around him who serve as advisors to our government. I speak as a citizen of the country. My name is Billet Magara. There is no reason for me to hide my identity because I feel that it is a duty as a citizen to advise the President or to inform him about goings on or to assist him to evade danger or risks that would damage both his personal reputation and that of the government that he presides over. There are many things that have been spoken about the Zimbabwean government by people who consider themselves friends, others who consider themselves advisors, while we have on the other extreme detractors who never believed in the nation of Zimbabwe in the first place. Mr. President, you preside over a country and a nation that is not like any other on the planet. I do not say these words in order to seek favors from you or to get you into a mode in which you falsely believe that you are in some kind of heaven. To the contrary, I know how gruesome the task that you face, that you have to execute is, and how humiliating it can get to be sometimes. How you can get criticized, how you can get humiliated, how you can get personally insulted. But at the same time, it is common knowledge in politics that a good leader is identified by the people that he chooses to work around him, to advise him, to walk with him. It is in this instance that I would like to play a little role as a humble citizen in pointing out foibles of our government that are providing weak links in the chain of governance that is giving impetus and power to your critics, both local and international. Zimbabwe is more than just a country. It is endowed with unbelievable mineral resources, natural resources, and human resources that are admired by other nations, which is why our children are in diaspora. Yes, a number of them left because they couldn't stand the situation as it prevails in Zimbabwe. They couldn't function. The skills they have could not be exercised. They couldn't work. Industries closed. The moral fabric of the nation got torn apart. The social fabric of the nation is in tatters. The psychological picture, the sum total of the mind of your citizenry, is broken. As it stands now, it will be very hard to find a Zimbabwean who is proud to be called a Zimbabwean. Why would that happen in a country in which we have virtually everything that no other nation on the planet enjoys? We have countries like Brazil and the Congo with their rainforest. We have countries like China and India who share part of the equatorial rainforest in their zones. But the minerals that they've got is far less than what we've got as a nation. We have listed some of these things before. The primary ones being gold, diamond, ruby, emerald, sapphire, tungsten, copper, chromium, lithium, platinum, uranium. We have quartzite of high quality, tourmaline, antimony, bauxite. The list is endless. Without these, most nations are not able to develop. We are talking about a technological age. And this technological age required one base mineral in order for them to be able to make microchips, and that is silicon. To the best of my knowledge, there's not a single mine of silicon in your country, Mr. President. And yet, virtually every square meter of our country contains silicon. Those are trillions of dollars waiting to be extracted from the ground. We have gold that goes to London. We see videos of Her Royal Majesty, the Queen of England, inspecting hundreds of gold bars in her own reserves. But Britain doesn't have a single gold mine. And the largest diamond trading nation in the world is Britain, and it doesn't have a single diamond mine. We have several. People have been observing. There was great celebration at the time when the previous government was dislodged, in a demonstration that other people would like to call a coup. Prior to that, you were humiliated beyond measure. Virtually every rally became a rally about Emerson Mnangagwa. Children clapped hands with glee. Your enemies celebrated. They went to famous places to roast meat and drink beer and cling and hit high fives in celebration of your humiliation. But there were those of us who genuinely believed in you, who knew that there was going to be a change, who felt that this change was going to be positive, and this change was going to shake the world. In July 2007, you invited me to your office, and I was humbled. And at that time, I think your office was at the corner house where the British High Commission used to be. I obliged. Among some of the things that we discussed, a statement stuck out. You said, I like your mind. I like your brains. There's a time in the future that is coming when I shall be able to invite you so that we can work together, because I believe strongly that we need to work together. I asked you, how will I know when the time comes? And you said, you will know when the time does come. Meanwhile, stay away from me. Don't get any close. I've got enemies in the system, and they just, excuse me, might bundle you and include you in their fight with me. I obliged. I waited. And when I saw the opportunity, believe me, Mr. President, I have made so much effort to come and see you. I even drafted a document, a 78-page document. It remains confidential. I may not be able to explain it in this audio, but it would change the destiny of Southern Africa if it were implemented. I wrote another one, and this time I requested time, was given space and time at Munumtapa House by the Secretary to the President and Cabinet, whom I did not meet directly, but his lieutenants made me believe that he had sanctioned the move. So I spent approximately 2 weeks in the temporary office writing for you a document for the construction of a city that was going to change Zimbabwe. And there are many companies and countries that were willing to take part in it. They still remain surprised that it has not been taken up. But that is not the gist of this audio. These are just snippets to remind you that you preside over an unusually gifted nation. And therefore, the need for us to go to other nations and ask for assistance, financial or material, must really fall by the wayside. There is no need for us to do that. But my area of major concern for the moment is the current crisis that has been codenamed the COVID crisis, created by that virus they call the coronavirus. Information that is coming from overseas and from other parts of Africa has indicated that the recovery from any illness created by corona is rated at about 97%. And there is no reason why a vaccine should be created when a disease has got a 97% recovery rate. Your advisors, educated as they are, with their backgrounds of working with Western people in Western institutions, can be very intimidating to people who do not research. I do research. And it is for this reason that I am absolutely convinced that your medical advisors are taking you down a very wrong path. They are convinced in their ministrations, they are convinced in their public addresses that the so-called vaccine that was created is a heaven-sent gesture that is going to save an entire nation of 14 million people. We do not know how they are going to implement that, and we do not know how they are going to arrive at statistics that will show that 100% of those that were vaccinated have been saved in the future. But what we know is that the rest of the world is recoiling from the vaccine because it is not a vaccine. I know that you are not a scientist. I know that your background is law. But a good lawyer doesn't just look at the statutes of the law. He looks at whether or not the laws that have been passed are good laws or bad laws, because such laws exist. History has proven that bad laws can actually be passed. I've constantly talked to most of my classes when I was teaching in colleges that bad law does exist. Slavery itself was an institution that was legal because it had laws that supported it, but it was bad law. We are proud, falsely, of following a law that dominates our own constitution, a law that has been borrowed from the north, and they call it the Roman Dutch law. 41 years after independence, after several reviews of our own local constitution, national constitution, we still do not have any tenets within our laws that indicate that we're an independent nation. We are not proud of our history because it's not included in our law. We are not proud of our culture because it's not enshrined in our law. This is a weak link in our chain, Your Excellency, that must be addressed. A nation is also identifiable by its national principles. When Robert Mugabe was president of the country, he made terrible blunders. But there was one thing that he was consistent about. He was proud of his country, and he would not broker or entertain any interference in the affairs of the country. Any demands that came from Western nations was supposed to be duly scrutinized by him and his team. And if he found that it was unfair for the country to follow through the demands that were set by foreign nations upon Zimbabwe's governance and economy, he rejected them. What has stunned us since you took office was your style. And so we can't really judge you as citizens. Whatever they threw at you, you took. Whatever demands they made, you followed. And I thought at first it was a strategy where you would exhaust them, where they would make demands and you would just follow to see what they do next. But Mr. President, you have forgotten one thing. When you're dealing with white people, whether it is in North, Central or South America, or it is in Europe where they mainly come from, or it is in Asia or Africa, there's also one consistent characteristic about white people. When they are in positions of power, they lie. They will tell you that if you do this, we'll do this for you. If you do this, we'll remove this from you. And everything that you've done, they have done nothing to alleviate your situation. If anything, they are already beginning to play the drums of regime change once again. Which means they are never satisfied with what an African does. You are an African, Mr. President. You preside over a nation of 14 million people, possibly 13 million of which are black. The rest are a concatenation of other nations and races that have come to settle on our land. We have accepted them. They've grown to become citizens of the country, and nobody can argue against that. But what I would want to point out is the fact that power is nothing without the exercise of authority. You have the authority to turn them down. You have the authority to demonstrate to your people that the power that they gave you and invested in you is properly and duly exercised for their benefit as the electorate, as the people that elected you into power. When you came, the first few weeks of your governance, you made public pronouncements to the effect that the people who committed grand theft in the country were to be arrested within a matter of months. And you gave them a deadline of 3 months. And you made public pronouncements to the fact that those who were not going to come forward to declare what they had done, to surrender the sums of money illicitly acquired, were going to be publicly exposed. And they would be arrested and detained. So far, there's a new song in Zimbabwe where people talk about people being arrested and released. Catch and release is the social phrase that they are using today. It need not be. Kariba, for it to be fully renovated so that it comes to maximum power production, needs roughly 580 million US dollars. And yet the country knows that $16 billion worth of diamonds went missing, and a small cartel of people, probably headed by some woman, are in charge of the handling of the $16 million worth of diamond that went missing. One person, one small group of people that do not number to more than 200 have $16 billion, while Kariba needs 580 million, just slightly over $500 million, in order for it to be fully renovated. You can imagine how much that money would do to change the economy of the country, to reinforce the reputation, good reputation that you otherwise would have built from the very beginning. I feel strongly that it is necessary as the head of state to scrutinize these issues. I have mixed the two because there is a link. We are in an invidious position when it comes to COVID because we are broke. The economy is bankrupt. But the people that are advising government through WHO and the United Nations are deliberately misleading the government into believing that the advice that they are given is going to guide them and pull them out of the crisis, and then the people will celebrate them. It is the diametric opposite of that. the advice being given is going to ensure that you leave government. The advice that they are giving to those around you to pass on to you is intended to make sure that by the time you leave government, you leave without a face. They are going to humiliate you. There are those of us who stand under the flag, resolute and convinced that this country is like no other, and we can show the rest of the world that this can be one country, homogeneous, multiracial, multi-ethnic, but has got the capacity for a certain unity and the creation of a nation that has never been seen on the planet. That possibility is there, Mr. President. I'm not too sure where your reluctance comes from. I would have thought that you would embrace some of these things, but some of us have been blocked more than 12 times to come in and see you, let alone have a single appointment to discuss these important issues with you. But it has not happened. Our country is rotting. Our economy is half dead. And they are not going to open industry, much as they would reassure you behind closed doors. They will not do that. COVID is not about a disease, Mr. President. COVID is part of the international work and plan that was created by those that call themselves the Illuminati. They want to collapse the world's economy. They want to ensure that the population of the world is reduced. You may consider this a conspiracy theory according to those around you who would want to steer you away from such topics. But a conspiracy theory remains a conspiracy theory only if it cannot be proven as a real thing. As it stands now, it is not a conspiracy theory anymore because it is proven. The characters of the people that are running within government at the moment have reached the point of embarrassment. They steal without conscience. Even little children in primary school now know by name people who a few months ago or years ago had nothing. Today they don't know what to do with the wealth that they have accumulated, and they do not have a single job that they have done. They do not have a single business that they have, and they have these direct links within government. And at the end of it, people draw conclusions, right or wrong. My appeal to you is that as we face 2023, where hopefully there will be elections, although I personally doubt that they will be there, with the way that these people have planned how the pandemic is going to completely decimate the plans that Africa has, it is imperative that you correct the trajectory of your governance so that your people remain loyal to both you and the flag, so that they derive greater confidence in governance. Because as it stands right now, it is very difficult to persuade anybody to believe that a politician is the right kind of creature to lead a nation. And it need not be. What makes politics dirty and what makes politics receive such descriptions that are dire from the commonality of the people is that we allow criminals to get into politics. We allow criminals to rise to positions of power. We allow criminals who murder without conscience, criminals who steal from the disabled, from the blind and the children, from those that cannot look after themselves. We allow criminals without a conscience who enjoy themselves at the expense of everybody else. And that speaks for complete lack of maturity on the part of leadership. You must not be counted amongst that leadership. You must veer away from these. And the first port of call is to stand back, re-look at the advisors that you've got around you, reappoint them, and then make sure that the people that you get do not necessarily agree with you in everything that you state. It is necessary sometimes to find contradiction even in your own meetings, because those contradictions ensure that the mind remains alert. So, Your Excellency, I have no experience in governance. I have virtually no experience in politics. But what I understand is that the love that I have for my country is sufficient fuel for me to be able to burn for many, many years to come and transfer the heat to the coming generation so that they can pick up the flame and continue the flame of our freedom to burn to eternity. It is my personal conviction. If I am wrong, I stand to be corrected, Mr. President. But there are people who are moving around the countryside today, seizing property, and they are not white. They are our own people. We see right in front of us veterans of our wars for freedom, living lives that are despicable, living lives that are piteous. When they fail to pay school fees for their own children, some of them are one-handed, others have no legs, some turned blind, others are in wheelchairs, those that can at least find the wheelchairs. They are hobbling around the streets. Men and women that should be praised, men and women that deserve a pedestal of honor in the sovereign freedom of their country, today stand with their heads hanging, and they are humiliated by the same people that used to cooperate with Rhodesia, with Ian Smith and his horde of people that governed. When we reach a point in our freedom, when people begin to feel a certain sense of nostalgia for Rhodesia, it spells failure on the part of those that are in governance, Mr. President. Please receive my humble advice and my humble criticism, not because I have anything personal against you, but because I feel strongly that this thing that you started is supposed to leave a legacy for the country. We are not supposed to engage in aggrandizement, in collection of wealth, in making ourselves so rich in the end that we don't know what to do with the money. You remember people that used to build mansions in northern suburbs with 52 toilets. We have people that have built houses beyond human description, houses that have become centers for tourism, with people visiting from overseas to come in and see, are these houses for real that are being built in Zimbabwe? And yet those people cannot provide you any modicum of evidence as to where they got their money. We need criminals to be arrested. We need criminals to be tried. And we need criminals to be detained. We need the money that they stole to be returned. We need the resources of the country to be properly organized in such a manner that they become advantageous to the good of the people of the country. It is important for us to revive our constitution and revise it, review it, without apology, and include tenets that must come from our history and our own culture. Without that, there is no reason for people within the country to have any belief that they are independent or sovereign. And what we face today with this disease, which is not a disease at all, it is a political weapon. I was one of the people that celebrated the transfer of the Ministry of Health to a man in defense, because I felt that the external enemy has changed its tactics from looking at solid weaponry, hardware, into biological warfare, which directly affects health. But I'm disappointed when I hear the minister speaking with absolute confidence about a vaccine that has developed a reputation for killing, and him and his subordinates encouraging people to go for vaccination. We need to take a principled stand. We do not need to please anybody. We do not need to please the United Nations. We do not need to go back into the Commonwealth for any reason. If we are invited, fine, but we should be in a position to accept or to turn down, because we have our own sovereign rights as a country to look after. Let us mobilize the resources that we were God-given and see that future generations have every reason to praise that preceded them. As it stands right now, we are going to be cursed by future generations, Your Excellency. And I think it is important that you sit back for the moment, reevaluate the journey you have made, and see how best you can correct it. Because as it is now, your people are gradually losing confidence in your authority, in your exercise of power, and in the trajectory that you have taken. The Minister of Finance, well, I cannot give judgment or characterization. But what I have noticed is that his advice is taking you off the rails, because I know that he is friends with three very powerful houses in the Western Hemisphere. And it is for this, frankly, I believe, that he works. Whatever advice he gives you, remember what happened to Nigeria. It was $1.50 naira to $1, and they were persuaded to devalue their currency. Until today, devaluation of currency always leads to poverty. And I cannot understand how our finance minister is so fervent, effervescent with his belief that devaluation is a necessary tool in order for us to reawaken our economy. We have nothing in reserve. We have a reserve bank. And perhaps it is at this point that I would want to cross the bridge and ask you perhaps a question that is unfair, Mr. President. But do we really have a reserve bank? Why is it that rumors and the media stated that about 2006 there were only 6 reserve banks in the world that were not owned by a certain American family, and the Zimbabwean bank was one of them. By 2014, Zimbabwe was off that list. What does it mean, Mr. President? Does that mean that our reserve bank is now privately owned? If it is, what is the destiny of the monies or funds that are created by your people when they work so hard every day? And they put them into banks which put them in reserve. Who benefits the most? Are we in control? Why can't we come back to our own currency? Why can't we create a reserve so that we strengthen our own economy? Yes, there are many theories in economics about how we should strengthen our currency from exports and all this stuff. But the easiest way out is always creating sufficient reserve in the reserve bank to be able to buttress the strength of our own local currency. I will not engage you in that debate, but if I should be called as a citizen to come and answer to some of the statements I've made, I hope that they do not come across as allegations, but I am certain that you have deviated from the path that was given to you by your ancestors to govern your people and move them towards happiness. As it stands now, the misery around you is unfathomable. People are dying in their houses and you will never know. Funerals are being held and it is not a public thing. And therefore, many of these negative goings on have a direct effect on your reputation, Your Excellency. It is important that the place around you be clean. It is horrible to see bright minds like the death of recently the young man Munatsi, a great technocrat. And I'm not just praising him because he is a distant relative of mine. In fact, he's a nephew. His mother is my aunt. I am of the Duma tribe. He was a brilliant mind. How many other brilliant minds have we lost in the country? What are we going to do to harness similar intellectual power and skill to be able to get our economy up on its legs again? Who are we trying to please? There is no reason for us to please Britain. There is no reason for us to please France or the United States. There is no reason for us to please Russia or China. There is no reason for us to please Japan, Brazil, or India. There is only one group of people that we must strive to please, and those are the local citizens of Zimbabwe. Those that want to join us in the creation of wealth can come into Zimbabwe, but they must not come with a superior attitude. China assisted us to great length during our freedom struggle, and whatever gratitude we express to them will never be enough. But to allow them to ride roughshod over our national rights and sovereignty and humiliate our people is totally unacceptable. And I cannot see why you remain quiet when things like that happen. They are racist taunts, deaths even, that have been caused by Chinese people. Zimbabweans are buried underground with the people who are supervising the burial as Chinese people. Some are going into villages and taking whole tracts of land under your name. And when you have village heads and chiefs and rural councils protesting, they are told by the Chinese, go and talk to your president. These are the kinds of things that I feel strongly that you, as head of state, must stand up and fight against. No matter what people say, no matter how much praise singers will come to you and tell you you're doing the right thing, it is important to sit back and look at how genuine those statements really are. Let me end here, Your Excellency, with a word to inform you that your people are the kinds of people that any nation would want, but they are in danger. I want to end as I started, with COVID. Farms are going to be purchased with the money that comes from the United Nations. We are members of the United Nations. Literally what they are doing is that our membership fees are being used against us to create detention centers for our people. No nation should ever be placed in that position. But we believe strongly it has begun in South Africa. The United States military base at Molepolele in Botswana is not a coincidence. They prepared long before we even knew why they were constructing it. We only understood a few weeks ago when trucks from those bases crossed the Botswana-South Africa border to start the exercise, perhaps, of forcible vaccination and the creation of detention farms. Sir, if this thing happens in Zimbabwe, with the kind of psychological and mental mettle that your people have, it is very possible that you will have a real military war on your hands. Your people have developed a reputation in the region of passively looking on when things are going bad, but they reach a certain point where they will not tolerate it anymore. You do not want to be in the seat of power when that time does come, Mr. President. We know, Your Excellency, that you are a formidable person when it comes to issues of intelligence. Very few people can compete with you. But sometimes, when intelligence is closed in one eye, spatial measure becomes very difficult. You can reach out for what is not there. And those that want to make sure that you fall will let you take a step towards the abyss, the precipice, when they know you are going to fall. And they will celebrate when that time does come. I do not wish to be counted amongst the people that will celebrate. I wish to give advice to government and respect the seat of power, because that's the only one that we've got. We've only got one flag, and we should serve it. That statement is not for the citizenry, Your Excellency. It is for you as the head of state as well. You are the #1 civil servant, and you must serve your country. That's the message that I had for you. There is reason for people to believe that fear is what is making Zimbabwe what it is today. A frozen nation with very little thought, very little creativity, because they are ruled by fear. You do not have to leave a legacy like that when you leave office. I'm certain that you are beyond that. There are people in Matabeleland who are still crying over the issues of Gukurahundi, 41 years after independence. Well, we could say roughly 30 years after the conflict. Resolutions should have been made now, and people should be settling down. We have sufficient resources to pay those families whose emotions and psychologies were damaged, who lost relatives, who lost breadwinners. They are our people. But of course, there are other people that are coming through and creating other issues such as Mtwagazi and so on. Those must never be allowed to grow. Zimbabwe remains one nation and can never be divided. We should remain indivisible in our sovereignty. And to have the western part of Zimbabwe under a different flag and a different nationality is totally out of the question. Perhaps those that seek that must be made to return to their countries of origin, where they can be given space to start such things. For that, if that is your position, we stand with you. But it must be done in a manner that spells democracy rather than violence. It is with these parting words, Your Excellency, that I wish to thank you for going through an impossibly long audio message. But it is also my hope that as you listen to these words, I'm comforted to know that you have finally at least received some of the things I wanted to impart to you humbly as a citizen. We hope that the Creator makes it possible for you to acquire a new vision, revisit your people, intermingle with them, find out their pains and their losses, and see how best you can redress that. And then we can take up a new position, go back to the main path of our destiny, that which was given to us by our ancestors, so that we can become a nation that the entire planet can admire. Thank you, Your Excellency.